Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. This is Brother Ali, and this is Face to Floor. You can check out the blog at face2floor.wordpress.com. And inshallah, we're going to have a relatively short video talk. This is going to be an addendum. This is going to be an addition to the second part of Advice to a Poor Black Muslim Youth. We're talking in part two, we were talking about the importance of self-education. And when we're talking about this, we're not talking about learning the religion, because you don't learn the religion from what some people might call Sheikh Google. You don't teach yourself the deen online. But we're talking about certain skills that a young person is going to need to survive in the 21st century economy. And that pertains, last time we talked about the learning languages, learning English, gaining proficiency in formal English, and inshallah learning other languages. Another point I want to mention is also keeping up with technology and mathematics. These are areas that inshallah a young person, he or she, needs to learn in order to be economically relevant in the 21st century. So I did say that what we would do is do a reading from the autobiography of Malcolm X, and we're going to read from his encounter while he was in prison with the dictionary. So he says, "I saw that the best thing I could do was get hold of a dictionary, to study, to learn some words. I was lucky enough to reason also that I should try to improve my penmanship. It was sad. I couldn't even write in a straight line. It was both ideas together that moved me to request a dictionary along with some tablets and pencils from the Norfolk Prison Colony School." He says, "I spent 2 days just riffling uncertainly through the dictionary's pages. I'd never realized so many words existed. I didn't know which words I needed to learn. Finally, just to start some kind of action, I began copying." So Malcolm, as he mentions, that he couldn't understand what he was reading because he didn't have an adequate vocabulary. And as we mentioned in the last video on this topic, we said that it's critical. If you want to learn a language, you need to gain the vocabulary, to know the vocabulary of that language. And if you're going to start, if you're here in the United States, for example, Canada, if you're in UK, if you're going to learn a language, learn English, because this will be the language, inshallah, that you need for employment opportunities, not only here in this country, but also in other countries. And this doesn't mean to neglect Arabic, but I didn't go into Arabic, because you need to find trustworthy people to learn the language from, so you can learn it properly, inshallah ta'ala. He says, in my slow, painstaking, ragged handwriting, I copied into my tablet everything printed on that first page, down to the punctuation marks. He said, "I believe it took me a day. Then, aloud, I read back to myself everything I'd written on the tablet, over and over aloud to myself. I read my own handwriting." He said, "I woke up the next morning thinking about those words, immensely proud to realize that not only had I written so much at one time, but I had written words I never knew were in the world. Moreover, with a little effort, I could also remember what many of these words meant. I reviewed the words whose meanings I didn't remember. Funny thing, from the dictionary first page right now, that word aardvark springs to my mind. The dictionary had a picture of it, a long-tailed, long-eared, burrowing African mammal which lives off termites caught by sticking out his tongue as an anteater does for ants." So he remembered from having copied the dictionary, copied the first page of the dictionary, this stuck out in his mind, this is stuck in his memory. And part of the learning process, as Malcolm mentions here, is repetition. To review, to review, to review, to review, so that the information that you're studying sticks. So when you're acquiring your vocabulary, like I said, keep a little notebook with you. When you hear words on the radio, or if you're watching the news, for example, or you're reading something and you're not familiar with the word, write it down. Don't just put it in your phone if you're using a smartphone, but also write it down, because like he says, having some penmanship skills, these are still important. So this isn't a skill to totally neglect, but also to have keyboarding skills, because this is going to be, as far as we can see, as far as we can tell, this is going to be the primary mode of communication. He goes on to say, I was so fascinated that I went on. I copied the dictionary's next page, and the same experience came when I studied that. With every succeeding page, I also learned of people and places and events from history. Actually, the dictionary is like a miniature encyclopedia. Finally, the dictionary's A section had filled a whole tablet, and I went on to the B's. That was the way I started copying what eventually became the entire dictionary. It went a lot faster after so much practice helped me to pick up my handwriting speed. Between what I wrote in my tablet and writing letters during the rest of my time in prison, I would guess I wrote 1,000,000 words. So again, Malcolm, he's basically, when he's in prison, he's basically semi-literate. Now, he wasn't a dummy. He talks about he was at the top of his class up through middle school, up through 8th grade, and then he had an event that really changed his life. I believe, I don't remember the teacher's name right now, Ostrowski was his name. Basically what I call, he had an Ostrowski moment, and then he just ended up having no regard for school. And then this leads to him ending up in the streets and being a hustler and a pimp and that story. And inshallah, we will talk a lot more about Malcolm on the blog or in these videos. And also there's some things about Malcolm on the blog. So he starts off, having been away from learning for so long, he's basically semi-literate. And in order to make up for this lost ground, he goes ahead and copies the dictionary. Now, let me mention something religiously. When we're copying material, we should use the method of narration. That is, you're reporting what someone else says. Sometimes you might be reading something or you're copying something. It has a statement that's wrong, it's a lie, or it's blasphemy. You need to report, and without being pleased with the lying or the blasphemy, but you may want to report what someone else says. So don't just say or write the statement of blasphemy, but use a method of narration. Like you can say, on page such and such of this book, it says, or I heard so-and-so say. So you use that method of narration either by writing it, or if you're talking, you can say the method of narration. So this is a way to protect yourself. And again, when in this process of self-education, you do have to set your priority with learning the religious knowledge first, learning the matters of Aqidah, and related to that, the rules pertaining to apostasy, blasphemy and apostasy, so that, insha'Allah, God willing, you can protect yourself. Let's read a little bit more. He says, I would suppose it was inevitable that as my word base broadened, I could for the first time pick up a book and read it, and now begin to understand what the book was saying. Anyone who has read a great deal can imagine the new world it opened. Let me tell you something. From then until I left that prison, in every free moment I had, if I was not reading in the library, I was reading in my bunk. You couldn't have gotten me out of the books with a wedge. Between Mr. Muhammad, he's referring to Elijah Muhammad here, between Mr. Muhammad's teachings, my correspondence, my visitors, usually Ella and Reginald, these were his relatives, and my reading of books, months passed without my even thinking about being in prison. In fact, up to then, I had never been so truly free in my life. So again, the books, and you have to be careful what you're reading. You have to read critically. You have to read from an understanding of, as a Muslim, from the point of view of traditional knowledge. But with that said, as a guy, as we're talking, mashallah, as the topic is, if you're coming out of certain circumstances, you have to expand your mind beyond the situation that maybe you have grown up in. You have to realize, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, that there is a very, very big world out there. And reading exposes you to a wider world. And reading makes you think in a way that It's not the same as being sharp and like clever and just talking to someone. It makes you think in an analytical manner, and also the acquisition of vocabulary so that you can learn formal English, learn it well, and express yourself with it well, insha'Allah ta'ala. So this, mashallah, this is a very good lesson. And Malcolm, if anybody thinks that, well, no one has ever made it up out of the hood, Malcolm is a clear example of someone who did, and as a result, he became, mashallah, through his efforts, through his, mashallah, his painstaking efforts, he has left a legacy that we are now a half a century later after his passing, after his being assassinated. And mashallah, because of the work that he put forth, he has been a beacon for a lot of people to point at myself. My fact that I'm here in front of you is to a large degree, but because of the influence that Malcolm X has had on my life. And of course, all of this is by the will of the Creator. So if someone else has done it before, certainly, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, you can do it also. There is no doubt about it. Allah is the Creator. So turn to Allah and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you support, to help you overcome your situation, to help you go beyond your circumstances. And then lastly, again, I want to make a plug for get your numbers game up also. And what I mean by that is get into mathematics. Because as we are entering this technology-driven based economy, math is the language of technology. So make sure that you, in the process, mashallah, that you acquire the knowledge of mathematics. If you have to go back to addition and subtraction, so be it. If you have to go back to multiplication, so be it. If you have to go back to learning your decimal system and fractions, that's the way it is. You have to start somewhere. As Malcolm said with the dictionary, get started. Don't delay. There's a website that is very useful for learning mathematics and other subjects. It's called Khan Academy. Inshallah, I will provide the link below, but it's called Khan Academy, and you can go right in there, and whatever level of math that you are on, just go in there and get started. Get started with your mathematics, get started with improving your English, insha'Allah ta'ala. You can go and get some books on vocabulary improvement, but as I said, make sure that you set your priority. Your first priority is learning the basic obligatory knowledge, and also learning in some details about the creed and the matters of apostasy, so that you will have the means to protect yourself in this journey of self-transformation. Walhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah. Again, this is Face to Floor. Brother Ali, please hit the like and subscribe to my YouTube station, and also the blog. Please, I need your help in sharing this information. So share it with your friends and your family via the social media and other ways, insha'Allah. Barakallahu fikum to all the Muslims, and I thank all my listeners. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, wa sallallahu ala rasulillah.